Thank you for staying with us on the AM show. And as has been mentioned, we're moving on now to talk about education. And yesterday, we heard quite a lot as Member of Parliament for Abilikuma West constituency, Honourable Ursula Owusu publicly made a declaration that 90% of senior high schools in the country have been connected to free Wi-Fi. She made the declaration on her official Facebook page, and she's been talking about it as Minister Designate for Communication and Digitization. She also mentioned it as she was vetted. The question is, how is this going to be replicated in junior high schools, as the sector minister designate also raised? So these are matters we're getting into this morning. We're going to be talking about cost sustainability of doing this and what other dynamics there are with regard to free Wi-Fi in our schools. Joining us for the conversation this morning, we have Kofi Asare, who is with Africa Education Watch. And we also have joining the conversation Mr. Thomas Musa, who is General Secretary of NAT. Both of them joining the conversation. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you.
Hi, good morning, and good morning to your choice audience. Good morning, Thomas.
I love the smiles on your faces. It means we're going to have a very good discussion.
Great having you here once again. Yeah. And to all them, everyone out there.
Right. I like the cheerfulness. Hopefully the conversation will go all through that way. So let me start with you, Mr. Musa. This claim has been made. Let's test its veracity. Is this something you, from where you sit, from what you see in our educational sector, the SHSs, is it something you can verify and say, indeed, we're at or above 90% when it comes to free Wi-Fi in the schools?
Well, thank you very much. From the place, or from the perspective of the Ghana National Association of Teachers, the 90%, I cannot speak on authority that we have a data to that effect, and therefore I cannot contest it nor say it is not true, since I don't have any data to that effect. And so once the minister has said it, what can happen is for us to interrogate and use at least the remaining days in the week to find out and do more investigation regarding what the minister has said. But having said that, at least I believe that there are statistics around to guide us. If for nothing at all, we are told by the World Bank, that's the 2019, that if you're talking about electricity, only 79% of the population in Ghana have access to electricity. And if you look at the Ghana Living Standard Survey, it is clear that those in Accra, they're talking about the source of light. They're talking about 96.5% in Accra. They have light as one of their major sources. And if you go to the urban forest area, we are talking about a margin of 91.6%. And you go to the rural savannah, we're talking about 48%. And so, looking at these particular figures that we are, even aside that, going by the same Ghana Living Standard Survey, we are told that only 57.2% of people in Ghana have access to television. It means that approximately 42.8% have no access to television. So regarding these particular statistics, I think if you juxtapose that to what the minister said, I think this will give us the cause to actually have to, so that we can investigate and interrogate the figures that the minister has put out. At least our secondary schools are not schools that we can say that we cannot go there. We cannot go and interrogate the figures. So I'll say that it is an assignment for us to cross-check or to audit what the minister has said, so that we can take it up from there. So
we in the media are taking it up. That is part of why we're having this conversation. Is NAT also going to take up this challenge to verify? Because sometimes we allow people in public office to get away with some of these things. Are you going to take it up?
Oh, exactly. Let me give you an example. Look, I think if you look at the 2017 budget, we are told that 1,171 kg blocks will be built. In 2018, if you look at the 2018 budget, nothing was reported. And if you look at the 2019 budget, we are told that 90 kg blocks were completed in 2018, and additional 150 kg blocks will be completed in 2019. But the 2020 budget was silent on it. So approximately, granted that even 300 kg blocks were completed, the question is, what about the deficit? What will be done? So
Right.
it doesn't mean that once somebody has spoken, we will not track it. You need to go out there and track it. Personally, this was when I heard about the 90, I've started, we started putting ourselves together and we will track it and check whether the 90% is, as
when can we expect to hear from that? When can
check
we
it and take it out from there? But for now, I cannot confirm nor contest it. But all that I can say is that we will check it.
You will check it. So by when should we expect to hear from Nat on this?
Oh, I think these things, actually, we need to develop the tools and all that. So, and the secondary schools are really huge, and the numbers there are huge. And today is 16th, and I think we need at least 1 or 2 weeks to get it done.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Musa.
So that we need to get the data correct.
Right.
We need to get the data.
Let me come now to Mr. Asare. Kofi Asare. Now, you've been listening in on the conversation. I'll throw the same bit to you with regard to the veracity of the sector minister designates, point. Last year, in about around September, she was telling us it was 80%. Now she's saying it is 90%. We also know that there are some schools in areas without electricity even. How does that factor in? How do you appreciate this 90% figure given by Ursula Owusu?
Well, once again, morning to your cherished audience. I think it is not impossible to reach 90% coverage in respect of the Wi-Fi connectivity. I don't want to call it free because it's not free.
The point is, are we there yet, Kofi? Let's hit the nail on the head. Are we there yet?
Yeah, I'm saying that it is. I think that I wouldn't be surprised if we have covered 90% of senior high schools and technical schools, in the sense that the Minister of Education made a submission somewhere in October, which suggested that we were more than 80%. And in November, I saw documentation from the ministry that suggested that we were almost covering all senior high schools. We checked from the College of Education, and they had all been covered. And so 90% coverage for the Wi-Fi wouldn't be too surprising, given the data that we saw. What we have not done is to go to the schools to verify. Unfortunately for us, we are working within a system where having access to credible data is very, very difficult. If you go to the ministry's website, there's virtually nothing there. And so, open governance is always a mirage. There's always nothing there. So details that could have been obtained easily from the website of the ministry, so that one can only select maybe the 10% that have not been covered yet and then visit them, or select a sample out of the 700 or so senior high schools and ascertain, are not even available. But I want us to look at other factors beyond the mere connectivity. Because even when schools were connected, we had issues of the connection only covering the school's administration. In some schools, it covers only the administration. It did not move to the laboratories and then the computer laboratories. In some schools, it did not move. In some schools where the administration was located at a different place and teachers had their staff common room at a different place, it did not move to the teachers' staff common room. It was only at the administration proper. So there were some issues when the connectivity started last year. We don't know the extent to which these issues have been fixed. The coverage issues, the quality issues, whether it's a shared bandwidth or dedicated bandwidth, and then the speed and all that. All these matters will have to be interrogated when data on the quality of internet meant to be provided to the schools is available to all of us, so that we can go and verify to see if the quality is as contracted. And so we need to interrogate all this in addition to the physical, or the mere checking of the box connectivity.
Right. Now, something we also take stock of, for now, it means we all have to dig into the documentation and, even the PPP agreements to find out what exactly the details are, so we know the bandwidth, quality, cost, among other things. But on the bit about cost, I want to talk about cost sustainability. Free SHS already has its burden, so to speak, when it comes to the national kitty. And now we're adding upwards of 60 million Ghana cedis, because we are talking about some 1.2 million students in that range, and 50 cedis being paid for every student, which would amount to about upwards of 60 million cedis. Is that sustainable, Kofi Asare? And what do you think about the cost, factor in there? Is it sustainable?
Yeah, I think whenever we talk about costs in the public sector, and more specifically in the education sector, let's always avert our mind to the African Development Bank report of last year, where it said that African countries, including Ghana, contribute the highest in terms of percentage of GDP contribution to education. But in terms of efficiency, we are the last. And we are not just the last, but between us and the last but one continent, there is about 20 percentage point difference. We are about 41, and then the last but one continent is about 64. The challenge is that we are not putting our limited resources into efficient use. So allocative efficiency and spending efficiency is very, very low. The issue of cost sustainability comes in here because presently, every child in senior high school is paying 60 Ghana cedis a year from this academic year to finance this Wi-Fi. And the state is paying that money for the child, which means that over 60 million Ghana cedis will be paid every year to sustain or to finance the operations of this Wi-Fi. The question is, did we go through a procurement process that assures value for money? Is this the best deal? Why did we have to go through a small company to procure services from Huawei and Vodafone?
Do we know the name of this company?
There is a company. It's a small company. It's a company that was procured. That was procured, through selective tender, I guess. And then that company went and then procured Huawei and Vodafone. We are using Vodafone internet, so why didn't you go straight to Vodafone? We know how these things work. And so
when you say you know how these things work,
we wrote to the Ministry of we wrote to the Chief Director of the Ministry of Education to give us a copy of the contract, and then he refused. He told us he was busy. When we followed up his call, he said he didn't give it. He didn't give it to us. And so later we learned that the contract was likely to be with the Ministry of Communications and this particular firm. But you see, it is being funded with education cash. And so we still have a feeling that it probably might be a three-party contract between the Communications Ministry, Education Ministry, and this small company. We need to have an analysis of the value for money considerations of this particular work. Because why? Because under the NDC, there was a Wi-Fi intervention in most secondary schools. Right. But it didn't last beyond 2 years because of sustainability issues. And so if we are not told how long, and I am convinced that we might be paying 60 million every year until the kingdom comes, 60 million Ghana cedis. If that is the case, then obviously the free Wi-Fi thing will not be sustainable. And so we need to look at the contractual arrangements to see if the current 60 million plus a year being paid by government to this firm, supply internet to 700 schools, is the best deal we could have gotten on the market, or would have gotten something much, 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 much cheaper if we went directly to Vodafone or MTN. Okay, Kofi. So we should have a discussion on all this so that when we are sure that we have the best deal, that is when we can say that, look, the cost is good and it assures us of cost sustainability, not only in the next 4 years, but then beyond. Before I go to Mr. Musa with the same, thoughts about this cost sustainability bit, Kofi, you said at some point that you know how these things work, and with regard to that company that was brought in to sort of serve as an intermediary, if you like, bringing in Huawei and Vodafone. When you say you know how these things work, what exactly do you mean? Do you suspect something fishy happened? Oh, yeah, normal with governments in Africa. Normally established institutions, multinationals, have very, very strict, corporate governance, principles, ethics, and all that. And so they may not like to play ball with politicians. And so we know that most times politicians would like to rather front with local companies with whom they have, a relationship, so that they will in turn go and procure We've seen it. I mean, in this country, we've seen it. I mean, look at. Let me give you an example. Look at Ameridi. We went through a smaller company to go and procure Ameridi. Why didn't? We went through Ameridi to go and procure generators from General, the electrical firm. I've forgotten the name. Is it GE or something? When the company that produces the generator was there. We are always going to third parties because of obvious reasons. In Africa, it is common practice.
Where the obvious reasons are what?
To always procure a big contract because of the willingness of these agencies to play ball.
Right.
And so whenever we see such arrangements, as practitioners within the value for money space, we know that value for money considerations will have to be raised, because there's always a good reason why, if I want internet for 700 schools across Ghana, I won't go straight to Vodafone, the guy who sells the internet. Then I'll go through an agency. Why am I going to an agency?
Good question.
Value for money for us is very, very important for cost sustainability, so that this Wi-Fi thing will be there all the time, because the cost is reasonable and sustainable within the context of the
Mr. Musa, let me come to you now. Looking at the numbers that we're talking about, upwards of 60 million every year, and looking at cost sustainability factors, do you feel we are getting value for money? What else should we do to guarantee that?
Well, no. I don't think that we are getting value for money. We had a discussion with our IT. We actually compiled a report on this. We started the report last year, September, October. But because we did not get the actual contract from the ministry, from the Ministry of Education, we couldn't proceed. And we didn't want to proceed on interviews we had with people who were within the value chain and other competitors in the internet space who were giving us information suggesting that this deal would have been very far lower if they came directly to deal with us. But then the point I want to make is that the 60 million, it's about 62 million a year, is definitely, it raises concern about value for money. The reason is that we spoke to other internet service providers in this country, the largest ones, and they said that if they were given the opportunity, they would have been able to provide these services for far much less than the way they are actually providing it through a third party. And it makes sense if you are, privy to how such, business negotiations and business arrangements are done. Once there's a third party, it means that you are splitting the profit among three parties. And so definitely the cost is going to be high. Even if the rate is the same, the cost is going to be high because there's another third party who is an agent who is outsourcing the equipment components to Huawei and outsourcing the internet component to Vodafone. That is expected.
So that question was actually also directed at Mr. Musa. Mr. Musa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, so it was actually directed at you. Do you feel we are getting value for money, looking at the numbers we're talking about, and sustainability?
I think before I come there, I want to situate my next line of statement or discussion on the framework of UNESCO in education in emergencies. There are three main items that UNESCO outlined. The first one is access, quality, and strengthening the system, or system strengthening to enable the system respond to education in crisis or in emergencies. And certainly we have found ourselves in that particular situation. Don't let us also forget that the Ghana Social Development Outlook 2018, published by the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, indicates that already the free SHS we are implementing is estimated to cost us 3.6 billion. Aside the issue of investment in infrastructure, among other related matters. And as indicated earlier on, you see, anytime, let's say, a politician tells you that, look, this one is 40%, 70%, or 100%, the difficulty is sometimes if we do not interrogate the issues, you might be tempted to go with what you have heard. And the temptation is that particularly when you are a practitioner and you are in the industry, going by that same thing and also going to say, particularly when you are not check and double check, it will come back to haunt you that it is not going to be like what has been said, but it is because you, as a practitioner, because you ought to have known better, and actually interrogate the issue, because you didn't do so, it will come back to hurt you. And so, like I said earlier, on all, we following this particular day, then looking at some of the schools, we ask ourselves if it is 80%. Yes, like my brother Kofi said, it is possible. But going to the individual secondary schools, we need to find out as to how the teaching and learning is going on. Because I've already told you that if all the schools were having lessons online, I think that we could have actually come a very long way during the time of the COVID. But if you look at during the time of the COVID, and we were exposed, or our weaknesses were really exposed. So talking about the value for money, we have no option that we together check it and double check it and tracking all the things that we've been told, particularly the things that we've been told in the budget. Because if once the thing has been, just giving you an example, that we were told in the 2017 budget that 1,171 kg blocks will be built. In 2018, the budget was silent on it. Then in 2019, in 2019, we were told in the budget that 90 completed and 150 kg blocks will be built. 2020, the question is how much were we able to build? And the same way, if we are being told today that the issue of the 90, there will be a need to follow up. And coming substantively to the issue of the finance we are talking about, look, irrespective of the amount of money we invest in education, to the extent that we don't go out to do the auditing as to whether the money is getting to the classroom, we will not get quality as regarding the framework of UNESCO, because quality requires us to go down there to the classroom, find out whether the money as invested at the top from the ministry level has gotten to the classroom. But if we do not go to the classroom to find out whether the money that has been invested out there is reflected in the classroom, then we will certainly have challenge on our hands.
Which body should be doing this, for example?
Is that almost every time the teachers are being blamed, that they are not teaching well, they are not doing what they are. The teachers are always at the receiving end. But as to whether the resources that are pumped out from the top get to the classroom, nobody. I am yet to see people commenting on that. So please, this is a duty call on all of us to be checking on all those things, to be tracking them, whether these things are getting into the classroom. And I think it will be in our interest, particularly because I have consistently said that, look, if for nothing at all, we should not forget what the World Bank has told us in their Human Capital Index report, that in the next 18 years, 56% of our human capital will go waste. And so if we have this statistic before us, before these statistics, we were giving these statistics, don't forget that COVID hadn't come. So if COVID is now confronting us, then how many of our population or children will go waste in the next 18 years? And so it calls upon, it behoves on all of us to take it upon ourselves. Anytime we hear things like this, let us go up. It should not be the duty of my brother Kofi alone. It should not be the duty of Nat alone. Let us all get involved. Let us all begin to interrogate the issues in the interest of Madagascar. After all, if we get one doctor, the nation stands to benefit.
All right.
If you get one nurse, the nation stands to benefit. If you get one journalist, the nation stands to benefit. If you get one researcher, the nation stands to benefit. So let us all get involved in this thing and make sure that we get value for money. It cannot be the job of one person.
All right. My checks reveal that in the erstwhile administration under the NDC, they also started a similar program with about 60% rate of schools having access to Wi-Fi. Then this administration came, and from what I hear, there was another procurement. Do we have a vicious cycle of waste then? Because you would ask yourself then, what happened to the technology that we acquired in the erstwhile administration? Was it just left to go rot?
Yes,
my brother.
I will tell you something that will even get you more. That will even get you more angry. The Auditor General in its 2017 report, or I think 2018 report, actually affirms the fact that some schools collected money from, some schools collected money from parents, paid an amount of money to ICT contractors for the purpose of activating this internet in their schools. And that money has still not been accounted for in many of the secondary schools. And I'm talking of money in excess of 10 million Ghana cedis. So in the Auditor General's report, he was raising an issue that it's been 2 years or 3 years since these monies were collected, and these monies haven't been accounted for because the schools collected the money from the students in 2016 or 2015 and then paid the money to this contractor or third party engaged by government to activate their Wi-Fi for them. And so there are a lot of issues with the previous Wi-Fi regime, which raises the issues that we are reiterating. We have seen it before. That's why we are saying that when you have a regime where the ministry is running an opaque contract culture, where contracts are always shrouded in secrecy, within a right to information dispensation, championed strongly by His Excellency the President. At this point, where public disclosure of public contractual data is actually a secret, then it raises concern about how contracts of this nature can actually be monitored by CSOs. Because if CSOs had access to these contracts that were signed in 2015 or 2014, we would have raised issues about how the arrangements were done. It's a case where someone went to schools, collected their money, and still the money hasn't gotten back to the schools.
Right, Mr. Musa, I'll just bring you. Right, Mr. Musa, I'll just bring you into the conversation at this point, specifically on the contract, the contractual bit. What do we do to get access to these contracts so we can know whether we are getting value for money, whether we're even getting the quality in terms of bandwidth and the rest in our schools, whether this project is sustainable and, give our own feedback? What do we do? Do we need to trigger the RTI law before we can get there?
Certainly. Certainly, because it is not for nothing that this particular act was on the table for almost more than 10 years and has finally come upstream. So we have no option than to activate it and actually all get involved in our governance to get it there. And I believe that when we get it there, it will help all of us. And I signed that particular one. I also think that, based upon one of the difficulties we have is the enforcement of our rules. Almost every time when there is an issue like this, or when issues come up, it is like, does this thing belong? How close is this person to me, or something like that? And if you look at the issue of this particular contract, whether we are getting value for money, it is because of also the lack of stability of policies in the education sector.
Right.
You see, if you look at from 1960, time will not permit me to tell you
please be very, very brief on that submission.
How frequent changes we have in education. And so if a new government comes, almost all the things that one government has done is likely to be set aside. Then a new one will be put in place. Then when a new government comes into power, there are times that even when a new minister comes into office, all the things that the previous one has done is likely to be set aside. You see, in education needs a lifespan of no less than 10 years to realize the maximum benefit of the investment in it. So if every 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, we keep on changing,
right,
no matter the investment we make, it will not yield anything. Okay. Let me give you the reason why.
Mr. Musa, we don't have enough time for that.
But please permit me. Let me give you this small thing.
Sure.
You see, as teachers, there are three main things we focus on. We talk about knowledge, or the cognitive aspect. And the next one is that whatever knowledge we give to the children must translate into change in behavior. And the last one is the issue of the psychomotor, the ability to be able to do things with their hands. And it will take not less than 10 years to get these particular three things or three domains achieved. And that is why it is very important that policies in education should actually have not less than 10 years lifespan. If even we want to tweak it, let us, review it more, but keep it intact so that it will last. But so long as we keep on changing 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, then we overhaul the whole thing, I can tell you we will have a long way to go if we don't want these things.
I'll give you the very last bite of the cherry, and in less than a minute, we're done. We're out of here. I want to find out from you, looking at all these discussions we've had, the JHS, replicating this at the JHS level, how feasible is it? What should we look at in less than a minute?
Well, I think it's a good thing to have Wi-Fi in our schools. It's a good intervention introduced by the government. And we should all support government to ensure that it's sustainable and it works. And in supporting government, one thing we can do is to get a contract, review it, and ensure that the architecture of the contract and it's actually towards sustainability than short term. In junior high schools, more or less, are becoming extensions of the senior high schools. It will be great to have internet in all junior high schools, especially also, so that they can also connect to the digital divide.
Is it feasible? However, is it practicable?
We should hasten and lesson from the experiences of managing the senior high school internet first. Then that lesson will guide us in extending internet to over 10,000 junior high schools. We are talking of about only 700 senior high schools, and we are struggling about the management. And so let's wait for the lessons to inform us on how we roll out the same intervention to cover the 10,000 plus junior high schools across the country.
Thank you very much. Kofi Asare, Executive Director, Africa Education Watch, and we also have been joined by Mr. Thomas Musa, General Secretary of NAT. We're incredibly grateful for your time. The conversation on education and free Wi-Fi continues. Up next, though, on the AM show, it's Cardi with Showbiz. Do stay.